Hello and welcome. I hope you've been having an okay day so far. And if you have other things to do, something to focus on, or maybe you're just trying to go to sleep after a long day, if that's the case, settle in, make sure you drink some water. Thank you for dropping by to my forever Minecraft base. I'm working on this with my sisters, and I'm going to expand on a little bamboo farm. And while I do that, I'm going to tell you a story from my childhood. And if that's something you want to listen to, strap in. But before we get started, I do want to tell you there are some content warnings. If you're not in the best mental headspace to listen to a story about my mental health, depression, parental abuse, neglect, and stuff like that, please click away and take care of yourself. I'll maybe see you in the next one. But if not, and you have time, let's talk about it. This is actually the second time I'm recording this, because the first time I recorded this I was so nervous and my voice was so shaky. I was like, yeah, I can't, I need to read this again. So the format is going to be, I am going to read you a page from a diary. So I was 22 years old when I was writing this entry. And then I'm going to try and maybe talk about my headspace a little and how things have changed. For the first video, I'm going to kind of talk about something not so traumatic, and see how it goes, and then maybe talk more about my experiences later. Yeah, so here is a diary entry from 2018, April 10th. My heart can't have what it wants, and from here onwards I'm struggling to explain myself. Here by heart, I am referring to emotional decisions. I know why, and that's because I haven't developed any. My sense in emotional maneuver. I have somehow, at a very young point in my life, decided for myself that emotions are unnecessary complications when it comes to living, growing up, or making decisions. It's very deep-rooted, so much so that I believe it to this day. It's a fundamental building block to my existence. Because of this, I never paid attention to growing emotionally. I am now incapable of analyzing and exploring complicated emotions and sometimes people's actions that are emotionally generated. Why did he kill himself? It was social pressure, and beyond that one logical reasoning, I am incapable of digging any deeper. I cannot individually understand the behavior of people that come from emotional places. Why is he jealous? Why is she angry? I can understand these things, but at a very surface logical level. It doesn't mean I'm incapable of being empathetic, it means I'm incapable of entirely understanding or knowing. That's conflicting because understanding is very important to me, being the logical, analytical person I am. This is a reason why science is my favorite subject at school and history is my least favorite. I can very much understand the process of photosynthesis and fairly complex equations of electromagnetism, but never the reason why people write it other than at a surface level. I saw no potential in subjects like history, and it came from somewhere deep in me. When I chose to study biology for my advanced level, my best friend at the time decided to study arts, including subjects like political science, subjects I saw no potential in. I stopped talking to her and even accused her of choosing to study those subjects for whatever reason. This wasn't coming from a logical point to me, I see now. It's also coming from my existence who doesn't value emotions. It was conflicting to have her choose something that I was fundamentally against. And me being incapable of processing anything emotional just pushed the issue aside and stopped talking to her. I was perhaps 17 at the time, and I think that was a little too old for me to be not able to understand. But I never paid mind to it because emotions are unnecessary for living. There was something in the midst of it that I just couldn't comprehend, and that was the science behind emotion. Even though it doesn't mean anything to me, why does it mean so much to everyone else? Why are emotions a building block of society when to me it obviously isn't? After I started working, I was seeing this to be a reality more and more. I think the fact that I'm in advertising had helped me realize this much further and had compelled me to go out of my comfort zone and explore the world of emotions. And as I ventured out, I learned nothing. I was still stuck at the surface level logic behind a person's jealousy or sadness, but I did learn why that is. I discovered that the reason behind my incapability of understanding these things comes from a much deep-rooted place that I had spent years believing in, to this date and possibly in the future too. Now I can explain logically and fairly why my heart can't have what it wants. As I start to see the complexity, only see it and never understand it, of emotion, and of my own, which without my self-realization had built me to be what I am, I find myself simply fascinated by it. That's a dangerous zone, because this fascination is of a moth drawn into the fire. I don't know how to maneuver myself in this dimension of emotions. It's not a place for me to exist in, not successfully, and most definitely not now. I never know what to say or what's to be done when caught in an emotional moment with another person. In example, if I walk into a person crying, I cannot truly comfort them or understand them. I can be empathetic, but I cannot truly help them. In example, I don't know how to understand a person who tells me that they're romantically interested in me. It goes from being dysfunctional in simple everyday moments to being dysfunctional in more important and impactful moments. But luckily to me, growth is just as fascinating a concept. From 17 to 22 years old, I've grown emotionally, and that's great. Maybe I'd make it in time. Maybe I can be better than dysfunctional in a moment that counts, but that's for a me of the future. I do look forward to it. And that is the end of that diary entry. I chose this particular diary entry to talk about today because I liked that it managed to be self-reflective enough to understand that, hey, there are things that I am not very good at, while at the same time having enough foresight to leave that to a future version of me instead of being, I guess I was agonizing over it, but I there is some foresight here, and I like that. I think the ending was very compelling to me, but that's for a future me. Future me is here, and future me is going to talk about this. So I was a very emo child. I was very emo. And you can even tell, the way that I, kind of talk or write has, a certain flair to it. And I'm, trying to use all of these, poetic devices. And it's kind of not too bad, honestly, but it's also a little cringe. And that's normal. I think we should all look back and cringe at our younger selves. And there is definitely a lot of cringe here. But, I also have some compassion for this version of me. So let's kind of unpack why I felt this way when I did. So I wrote this, I'm 22 years old. I'm 28 now, so 6 years later, how do I feel? So I think, the opening lines itself are like very telling. Like at a young point in my life, I decided that emotions are unnecessary complications when it comes to living. And yes, that is because I grew up in a very abusive household where we were verbally and physically constantly berated and abused. I have been beaten by my parents throughout my childhood. I think I must have been 16, 17 years old when my mother stopped beating me. Until that age, she beat me. And there were a lot of like corporal punishment. It was kind of insane, like growing up in a household like that where both of my parents were, and I didn't know at the time when I was writing this that both of my parents were narcissists. And now that I know, like, I kind of see, like, how this happened. But at the time I didn't, and it really felt like I was going in circles. But, like, I'm inside the same thinking, well, like, there's no way out. That's, yeah. I was young, and I didn't know better. But, yeah, no, you're right. It's kind of, I guess I'm kind of talking to the younger me here. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's very deep-rooted, and justifiably so, because to survive the household you lived in, you needed to compromise not indulging in your emotions. So you never had the chance to explore what it's like to feel things, to be acknowledged in your feelings, to have your pain, your suffering, your joy, your accomplishments acknowledged. I can give you like little stories, like to talk about how my pain was never acknowledged. My parents took me to this dentist that I hated. And I say this because later, when I could pay for my own dentist, I chose my dentist, and I've been, going to him for like my yearly checkups for a long time, and I love that dentist. And now kind of looking back, having that knowledge to tell like, oh yeah, there are like great dentists, and my parents took me to the worst one because he was cheap and affordable. And like my parents were never, like, I think our parents had a lot of financial trouble, but like not to the point that, like, it's hard for me to imagine that so many corners needed to be cut. But then again, I was a child, so I didn't know better. But yeah, like I would be in tears every day. And as for my achievements, I remember when I finally got my bachelor's degree. Actually, before my bachelor's degree, my high national diploma. My father came to my graduation, and as he was driving me back home, he told me that everything I do is useless. Like, I'll never make any money, I'll never make a name for myself, I'll never live a comfortable life. Stuff like that. Like, it's kind of insane. Like, I mean, it's fair. Like, if you want to say something like that, we can have like a critical discussion about how valuable an art degree is in today's society, right? I think I'm happy to engage in that conversation. But on the day of someone's graduation is insane. And I really don't think he had the right, because he didn't pay for my education in any way, shape or form. I worked and I paid for my education by myself. And to me, that was a massive achievement that I did that on my own. Not only did he fail to say like, hey, I'm proud of you, he also just failed to acknowledge overall that I like had done something for myself. And I'm not even going to talk about my mother. She had like unsubscribed from anything I do from like a very young age. Like in school, one day she was like, you are too much of an embarrassment for this family. I'm never going to come and visit any of your educational endeavors ever again. And she stopped coming. I must have been 14 or 15 years old. She like gave up on me. She was like, I'm not gonna associate with you anymore because you are an embarrassment. So, growing up in that sort of household, it makes sense that you are, so compromised in your ability to have empathy for other people. And also that you're also, completely incapable of analyzing or exploring complicated emotions, or how people act on how they feel, because that was never an option to you. And then kind of in the second section here, I was kind of chuckling to myself reading this, because like the questions I'm asking are so polarized and charged against like really silly things, like why did he kill himself? That's heavy, in the same like kind of one go as like why is he jealous. I think it really kind of shows how I really was confused. I didn't know, like, from a sense of severity where to place these things. And I had in a previous entry written down that I've always had trouble feeling a little bit of something. I've always felt everything very intensely. Even the smallest thing, it would like upset me very much if it gets to me. And I felt very out of control because I had learned no techniques whatsoever to emotionally regulate myself. And that's fair, right? I didn't have parents who knew how to do that, let alone teach a child how to do that. If I was at any point crying or having a breakdown or was in pain, I probably got beaten and then told something like, hey, if you don't fucking shut up, how about I give you a reason to shut up? And I was beaten into not having or showing any of my, emotions, and then like incredibly invalidated. Like, oh, that's what you're gonna do? Cry? See if that makes a difference. And that's just the lesson I learned. Like it really was the way that I was living my life, useless to feel anything. It made no difference to me. And when you're young, I guess that's another thing, right? When you're young and you're this self-involved, and your entire world rotates around like silly, ridiculous things, and like when you're younger and you're in your youth, like the world feels like such a apocalyptic place. It certainly felt like that way to me. It doesn't anymore. Like I feel very less rattled by not being able to go to Christmas party, for example. I'm like, I generally I don't even want to go. And I bring this up because I have another entry many years later where I am like kind of having a breakdown once again, because I was not permitted to go to a Christmas party. And I was like kind of going on about in that entry like how I feel like I am not seen or treated like a human being. And it's true, like I think a lot of the time to my parents, we were extensions of them for like free labor. And also I don't know, like I have mentioned this when I was in therapy to my therapist one time. Like I feel like me to my parents is like an expensive china set that they put away in a cabinet and then take out whenever the nice guests come to show them that we have nice china. I mean, I think that was much later in my life when I felt like my parents were using me as a means to get praise from other people. Which is insane because they treated me so badly in much younger time, like when I was not 18 yet, like 15, 16. Those are the years that I remember correctly. I really felt like I was just free manual labor to my parents. And I don't know why I felt this way, because I didn't really do that much around the house. And I was so like debilitatingly depressed. Um, but yeah, no, there was a lot of chores. Now that I'm looking back, I don't think the chores were bad. I think the chores were reasonable. It's just it was I never felt like I was doing any of the chores for me. And I can really talk about this now because I haven't moved and I live in my own place now. And when I like clean my room or vacuum the house or do my laundry or I don't know, cook for myself to eat and then I clean up after myself after cooking, I have such a sense of ownership doing that. Like I clean my house, I'm doing my laundry, I'm doing whatever for myself, and I had no like sense of ownership with my parents. It was always, I have given you a roof, this is my house, my rules, you're wearing my clothes, go and change. If I tell you can't wear those shoes, you have to change those shoes. I really was on borrowed everything. Nothing was my own. I owned nothing. I was like, now that I have done some reading into slavery, I don't want to make that comparison. I don't think it was that bad. There were I want to say good times too, but it really wasn't. Like, I mean, end of the day, I still have my forearms, right? Like I have my two arms and legs, and that is escaping relatively luckily from that household. Anyway, it makes sense. Like I feel like yeah, it makes sense that I couldn't really place like why people do anything. The other section here I think is really funny too, that I basically had a friend breakup with my best friend a few years ago to this, because I couldn't really relate to what she was trying to do with her life, because she was pursuing humanitarian causes, and I was like, what is wrong with you? Who does that? And like I just felt like that was such a fundamental disagreement there. But of course we made up. That was such a silly friend breakup. We made up. We were so good friends. We're in touch. We managed to overcome that, but I was really silly. But yeah, I think when I'm writing this in 2022, I think we had mended our relationship at this point, and we were like really good friends. And that's why I'm kind of saying towards the end, like, I've grown emotionally, and that's good, that I've managed to like make space for my friend again. It was strange, and I think I was really narrow-minded and kind of very self-involved, and that happens to people who have depression. In my experience, when I was at the lowest of my depression, when I was like experiencing suicidal ideation, you're very tunnel visioned. You have no space in your heart, in your mind, for anything other than the self-loathing and pity that you feel for yourself. And that's also like some of the cringe that I have towards reading this is like, oh my god, you're so like it's like you don't have eyes. It's like your eyes are like inverted and pointed at yourself, and you can't see the world around you. And then because you grew up that way, you can't look around and understand the world outside. And I feel like a lot of the conflict here that I'm writing about is that adjustment period, and how difficult that was to like step out of a very abusive, controlling household to get into the workforce, and then realize that like your fundamental methods that you use to protect yourself no longer apply, and you have to learn how to maneuver this dimension of emotions to exist in it and feel very threatened and uncomfortable about it. And I think I have a lot of compassion for this young me. And I think end of the day, she wasn't wrong. She was right about everything, and she had enough self-reflection to realize that, okay, I am in the wrong here, I am handicapped here, I need to go and learn, go and understand. That was good. Looking back, that's good. I know I did something right. And if you yourself kind of have trouble, for example, if you walk into a room and there's someone crying and you don't know what to do or what to say, here's what I've learned. You don't have to do anything and you don't have to say anything. Most importantly, you don't have to solve their problem and you don't have to fix their pain. If someone's crying and you're there, you just need to comfort them, and to do that, you just have to listen. You do not even have to hug them. Just sit down and listen to them. Listen to what they're feeling, what they experience. And just, if you can, right, not every situation is it'll be okay, right? And perhaps you yourself is like not capable of extending that much grace. But if you can, just let them know that nothing's permanent and that they'll feel better. I'm going to contradict myself a second here, before I end. I think this sense of impermanence further fueled me wanting not to be around. So, I mean, it can be a little bit of a double-edged sword. It's also this meme, It's literally this meme. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I hope that was interesting. There is more that I want to talk about, and I always feel like when I stream, it's not the best platform to kind of talk about something like this because we will try to keep it fun there. Fun is important. But this is also relatively gets in my head juxtapositioned, and it's good to have an outlet to both. And I guess another one of the reasons that I want to do or continue this series is because such a large portion of my ability to overcome my anger, sadness, depression was reading and listening to other people's stories and how they overcame their struggles, and just having the vocabulary to describe what you were feeling and why is in itself such a crutch. And luckily for me, I have managed to get out and see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel like now it's maybe my turn to offer those words of comfort and stories that other people perhaps who are in similar situations can relate to, and hopefully let them know that you're not alone and you'll be fine. Goodbye.